What's going on, traders out there? Of course, this is Start Swing Trade, where we talk about my swing trading action and get into the sectors in the industry. Where's the rotation? And as it says in my title here, will the stock market pull back before the Santa Claus rally? Of course, Santa Claus rally expected to be closer towards Santa, but it seems like we've had ourselves a little bit of a situation, I think, between here on Black Friday sales and how it gets to Christmas, right? There's a little bit of in between time there. Will we see a pullback? Things that we'll talk about right here on Start Swing Trade. Let's take a look at the market. How are we doing right now? The SPY is hanging in there. You guys can see it's red overall right now, and so is the Q. But overall, I mean, look at this action, guys. It just seems like we just don't want to give up. And this is the hourly chart that I have here on the Qs. Take a look at the SPY. Very similar chart, right? Where you can draw an underneath a trend line support, and you guys can see how it's holding very well. This is important because if we can't break this, we can't shake the bulls, I'll tell you that much. And this could just keep running. All things that we need to think about, whether the SPY or the Qs, the technology outlook today. You can see it in the XLK, of course. Take a look at the daily on this. Look at the action that we've gotten, right? But what do you see here? One thing that I wanted to point out, and what my title says, is that it's slowing, right? That's one thing that we can see, sideways action. Does that mean negative action? No, but it does mean that there is a little bit of a slowdown, and all things that we can point to. But that's enough of money, Mitch. Of course, let's go ahead. Let's bring on the one, the only Nick Brown, as he's going to bring us some of the top headline news in the stock market today. How we doing, Nick? Let's get to the action. Of course, it was Black Friday. You just recently told me you were at the Cheesecake Factory. I mean, the channel checks are all over the place. I went to the mall. You went to the Cheesecake Factory. And let's just say, a lot of people are getting some of that cheese out there.
Yes, they are spending. Right after we got off the show, Mitch, and I was actually on my way to the mall, we learned from the TSA that yesterday, November 26th, was the busiest day ever at the airports here in the United States, with TSA reporting 2,884,783 people screened. It also was an incredibly smooth day of travel, with fewer than 0.5% of 51,332 scheduled flights canceled. We do know that recently we've been hearing that American Airlines, Spirit, United Airlines could be causing some issues because we heard in the summer regarding the delays, regarding cancellations. They didn't have enough help. So a lot of people were worried as we headed into the Thanksgiving holiday and even the busiest travel season. So this is a sigh of relief. Now we come Christmas, and will travel be the same? Can we break that 2,884,000 record? I think we can, just because a lot of people do travel for Christmas. So we're going to have to watch and see how this plays out. Remember, we talked about the Amazon and iRobot deal. If you could throw up a chart of Amazon and iRobot, we know that the EU is now warning that the Amazon deal may restrict competition. iRobot shares plunged today after Europe's antitrust watchdog said Amazon's planned $1.7 billion acquisition of the Roomba maker raises competition concerns. The European Commission said it found that Amazon may have the ability to prevent or degrade iRobot rivals' access to its online site. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission is also probing the deal. Well, we learned last week that everything was cleared. So now we have some questions regarding iRobot. And so the stock did take a leg lower today, down like 19-20%. It was halted at some time. And if you have been Benzinga Pro, you would have gotten that alert as I was out in the store and my phone went off. I'm like, oh, what is it? And it's a Benzinga Pro alert saying, hey, iRobot stock was halted, down nearly 20.3% at one point after this news come out. Amazon is higher by around 1.5%. iRobot's down about 16% Amazon spokesperson did tell CNBC in a statement that the company continues to work with the commission on addressing concerns identified in this probe. They say, quote, we believe Amazon can offer a company like iRobot the resources to accelerate innovation and invest in critical features while lowering prices for consumers. As I said, they were halted earlier this afternoon. And so now Amazon shares were up about 1.4%. So this is going to be something interesting to keep an eye on. with iRobot and Amazon. And only about here, probably in about a day or so, Mitch, we're going to actually be able to get some Amazon numbers regarding Black Friday. So we'll see if this has impacted Amazon at all. If you could throw up a chart of Meta, according to Bloomberg, a judge denies Meta its bid to force the FTC into court over a privacy deal. Meta, under FTC order on privacy, sought federal court review. The agency opened a proceeding on alleged new privacy violations. Remember, this is the FTC moving forward with revisions to Meta Platform's 2020 privacy settlement after a judge denied the social network's bid to force the agency into federal court. Basically, this is just a continuation of the lawsuit. And to end it off, we are watching WTI crude after OPEC repeatedly and haltedly decided to move next week's meeting, last week's meeting that was supposed to be in person in Vienna over the weekend, to this week virtually on Thursday. We are still waiting to hear what the decision is going to be coming out from OPEC Plus, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, and many other countries, as Saudi Arabia and Russia continue to try and get other countries to take on some more responsibility regarding oil. There was a chart today, Mitch, from one of a good organization that I always love citing. It's the chart Our Daily on Twitter or on X. They say the U.S. is producing a record 13.2 million barrels of crude oil per day.
Yeah, and just recently, like you mentioned it, the U.S. started refilling some, and that was at like 78s, if I could be corrected there. But the big thing that I saw there was like, man, are we ever going to go back into the 60s? Because if we go back to the 60s, it didn't really make sense to refill at 78, right?
No.
I think the U.S. was hoping that this would get back down towards like $50 or $30 a barrel, and then they could just pump it right back up, right? Especially at those prices, they could. Of course, I still remember the days when oil had kind of like that range. It'd go up to like maybe, let's say, 70s or 80s, and it'd go back down to $30 or $40 a barrel. Now it's become kind of a new norm to be up at like 70, 80, $90 a barrel. I mean, of course, that's going to be some struggle here. I've been playing a little bit of oil to the downside. I think, of course, OPEC Plus could change all of this by Thursday. So what I'm kind of expecting to see is I want to see a quick takedown attempt and then the run back, right? So what I would love to do is try to take the profits going into, let's say, Wednesday or to the end of the day on Wednesday, right? Because, of course, OPEC has a tendency of meeting when? Prior to U.S. market opens, right? So, of course, by Thursday open, this could be a whole nother stock. This could be a whole nother move, right?
And I was going to say, we know as we head into the winter months and travel doesn't seem to be as high because a lot of people are normally flying, it is going to be interesting to see how gas prices do. I think it was Joe Weisenthal from Bloomberg that says gas prices have fallen for 60 straight days in a row. Will that be able to continue with the XLE, Chevron, and all these other major oil companies after this meeting on Thursday? It's going to be a very important meeting just because Saudi Arabia and Russia they just don't want to handle all the responsibilities. They're trying to pass the torch, but nobody seems to be taking the torch. And so that's a problem that they're trying to decide. And so them canceling the meeting and then moving virtually kind of shows what this environment is like and the attitude that these companies, that these major oil industries are trying to show, that saying, well, we're not going to do this unless we actually have some support, because we knew, Mitch, and we've been hearing from this for the past few months, that there's been some pushback on the cuts, that there's no reason why they should be cutting production. And so now with this move, they're trying to get people on board, because I believe it has to be a big agreement for everything to happen. And not everybody's on agreement. They don't think that the cuts should be happening, that they should be continuing to produce and continue and to keep up with the oil targets. Cutting in this environment isn't just something what people want.
And we had some voluntary cuts, right, coming from Saudi Arabia and things like that. And that could all change in an instant, right? Because they don't want to cut. They want to pump as much as possible, but they want to also affect the price. Now, A little pun intended here. It looks like they want their cake and they want to eat it too, Nick. I know you've been enjoying your cheesecake,
I
and
didn't have
I
any yet.
guess
I didn't have any yet.
none yet. Oh man, I wouldn't even be on the show without some cheesecake. But you know how it
I didn't
is.
have enough room.
Oh, that's what happens. That's why I go to cheesecake and just pick up the cheesecake, and then I head home. I take the whole pie, like the whole thing, not a slice. I need the whole cheesecake, and
I'll
I'm
tell
bringing
you,
that
Mitch,
bad boy home.
we were talking about discounts and all the stores that I went to, 60% off, 50% off. So as I was rambling on Friday, it says, or the
Yeah.
consumers are waiting for the deals. Well, they're actually out there. The Lululemons, the Foot Lockers, Macy's, J.C. Penney's, all the major retailers, 50, 60% off. There was a few stores that was like buy one, get one free, buy two, get one free. So the deals are out there. You just kind of have to look underneath the surface. Now, Cyber Monday, we talked about this earlier this morning, and deals looked okay. There was some appliances on Amazon 30, 40, 50% off, but we're going to have to see how each major retailer does, like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, because we do know that Black Friday, that the home repair tools were not a leading indicator. They're actually underperforming. So we'll have to see if maybe Cyber Monday was able to grab a little bit more, saying, hey, come fix your house. We have better tools and better things for you to need. We'll see how the iRobots do of the world. We'll see how everything plays out in this crazy week as we lead into Travel Tuesday. I don't know if you heard about this morning, but Ryan and I were talking. There is a such event that is now tomorrow after Cyber Monday. It's called Travel Tuesday, and that is where travel prices decline a lot. There's a lot of discounts, and this is the time for you to book your travel wherever you are going.
And I think it's an important thing. We've been talking about the XRT for about a month now, I would say. And it hasn't just been, we were starting to look at this at the end of October. I wrote up the first wave, didn't jump on it on the second wave, but you can clearly see the seasonality has come into play. And this is why I always tend to look at this time as being a slight positive, even if it's a negative environment. And it hasn't necessarily been a negative environment here because the stocks themselves, and we've seen it, how tech has run, that helps this whole kind of battle here for these retail stocks to get a little bit of a lift before we go into the next year. And that's one thing that I've been saying is we could see positive numbers even going into next year. It doesn't necessarily mean that on January 1st they just shoved it back to us, because I think one thing that we'll see is we'll see some positive probably earning comments come from this holiday season, right? And that doesn't come out until let's say later into the month, right? Later into January. And so that's the one thing that I would keep in mind is that things won't look so negative right off the hop. It might take a little bit to actually see that negative come in.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have much negative this year just because there's so much inventory that these companies want to get rid of. But also it all comes down to the theft. We've heard from Walmart, from Target. We've heard from the major retailers.
They went hush hush on the last report, right?
They did. Notice that? That's a major issue. Like they were losing 500 some million just in thefts. So it's going to be very interesting to hear their commentary and to see the holiday season actually performed well, because the Target that was near me, I have like 3-4 Targets near me. They all seem to be packed, but more items are being locked up. And that's what we've been seeing because of all of these issues with people stealing, literally, I don't know, going in, raiding the store and saying, all right, I'm out of here. And the workers are saying, don't do anything. And we've learned that these incidents continue to get brutal. They continue to just be horrific. And that is kind of letting people say, hey, I don't want to be in person anymore shopping. They just stick to online. And I know the Walmart, the Targets, the Amazons, they all have the home delivery option. We're saying, hey, you just got to pay an extra $2.99, $3.99. If that's it. They're just going to order online and avoid everything. Or you just go to the store right when they open and you avoid all the major crowds.
Walmart selling fancy Christmas trees for $99. Was thinking about grabbing a spare, says Gerard. Yeah, I might need my Christmas tree myself, so I might have to call
and
up Walmart.
The day after Christmas, it's probably going to be marked down to like 30.
Oh, you know it. That's just how it works. I feel bad for all the Christmas trees sometimes when I see them just kind of just staying there. I'm like, what happens to all those trees? Well, We're not going to talk about that story. That's a sad story. But let's keep going into the stock market. You guys saw I threw up multiple retailers' names there. Jay coming in with some great comments in the chat about some of these good reports continuing. Some choppy, right? But I think that's something that we'll be looking at. Best Buy, I thought maybe could it have a reversal on the day? And it did. It came down out the gates, went back down, and now starting to close towards kind of the opening price, which is not a bad outlook. Starbucks was hot out the gates and now is actually turning to the downside. That's interesting to see. But we got to continue to watch a bunch of these retailers, right? Dick's had a nice little pop on their earnings and then now has pulled back. Will this see a next lift? We'll see, because I did see that there was a lot of sporting goods that were on sale. So who knows? Maybe Dick's Sporting Good can have a good Cyber Monday. And give us some good news. We'll find out on the retail story. Let's go to technology. Of course, the story that everyone wants to keep up with, of course, NVIDIA. And NVIDIA is coming back a little bit. It did come down out the gates and then started to bounce back. Seems to me like a lot of people kind of trying to buy the dip in this NVIDIA. Now, the only question is, where does you buy the dip, right? And will it get back to that 500? How long will it take to get to 500 is so important. Once it gets through that 500, that could definitely be the next rally in the queues. And that's why we're keeping an eye on it. Names like Microsoft, names like Apple. But one thing that you can see on those charts is sideways action. This is why in my thumbnail, you guys see me calling out the slowing down of the stock market. These are things that we need to keep on watch. Now, the only question is, will this slowdown actually bring a pullback? And that leads into, of course, will we get a Santa Claus rally? I think we get a little bit of a pullback going into next week. Even later this week, we get PCE on Thursday. Don't miss that. That's a big number to catch with that OPEC plus meeting in the morning, Nick. And then to make things better, we do got some earnings tonight. We got Zscaler that will be on the radar. Of course, Zscaler you're looking at here and thinking that maybe this can give PanW and those kind of stocks continued lift. Look at those stocks and how strong they are. CrowdStrike. These have been the names to own since pretty much October. And maybe even before that, when we started getting into all that controversy that was going on in the Middle East, what stocks really went up? Well, these cybersecurity stocks definitely moved higher. So I'm going to continue to watch these to see if they keep pushing. But we'll see what happens with these. Of course, the sector and the industry outlook wasn't the best today. Real estate technology in the green, everything else red. So it's interesting to see that the markets are hanging on, yet a lot of sectors red today. Let's take a look at the Qs and how we're closing up. And it looks like we just took a downturn to the downside. So let's see what happens, right? Will this continue to crumble? We'll find out overnight. I think this could be our pullback opportunity to eventually get into some tech names if you're not in the trade like I am, right? I'm more than willing to let these tech names fall to me and then maybe try to ride a little bit of that Santa Claus rally before I notice that Santa Claus left me cold on Christmas Day, which I think is an important outlook, right? Because I don't think these companies can just keep kicking it into next year, because the truth is we still have high interest rates. The growth is expected to slow down as consumers are expected to slow down next year. So we'll see what happens. Ugly closing candles here, though. 358.
Do you think, though, we can rally into year end? I know that this morning we were talking about S&P targets. They're coming out a lot on the streets. They think 51, 52, maybe even 5,400 by year end of next year.
Yeah. So the key here is that we're so close to, like, let's say at least the June high that I think we can go to that, which is only 4 points off. Now, are we going to go to 480s or 478? I highly doubt that, man. What I think we're in for now is a little bit of some sideways chop and pullback. And when we do get pullbacks, they're going to be short-lived because people are watching for any kind of tech weakness to jump in on these names. And the only thing that can really ruin this, I think, is some kind of conflict happening or expanding, at least from the situation that we have with the Fed. Unless something drastically changes on the PCE report, it's going to be continued outlook in the Fed. The Fed is on pause. We're waiting to cut, and we're not going to cut until we see weakness. But if it's just strength out there, well, guess what? Jerome Powell is going to sit back with a little bit of an umbrella and wait for all these presidential elections to go through.
Maybe he's at the Cheesecake Factory drinking some bourbon.
Hey, I hope he's getting that cheesecake because we all need some of that cheesecake, and he needs to share the love. But I think
because I think Michael Feehan pointed out that we're not only going to the Cheesecake Factory, but we need some Ozempic.
Yeah, we might need some Ozempic, man. It's a crazy thing. I saw those healthcare drugs definitely take a hit today. They actually led the downside approach here. My thought on that one, yeah, I think that too many investors loaded into all these weight loss drugs, and at some point they're going to have a massive pullback. That could be an opportunity if you never got in, but I would be a little bit concerned with charts like Lilly that have just absolutely gone to the moon. At some point, they might come back down to earth, especially with such competition getting into these, right? Pfizer wants to come in now. There's so many options. And in the long run, when you have competition, what happens? The pie gets smaller every time. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Up next, you guys will have, of course, the Trade to Black podcast. They'll be talking about new updates in Germany's cannabis bill. Don't miss that. That's going to come up next. And like always, you guys can keep up with my man, Nick Brown, at News by Nick. You guys see his handle right there. Give him my man a follow. If you guys are ever catching news and you guys want to talk about it, Nick's the man. And he also helps, of course, keep up with our Twitter. This guy does it all. Always great to have you, Nick. And it's always a blessing, man, honestly, to have you. I'm always impressed by your knowledge and what you keep up with. You're able to keep up with the markets, keep up with school.
You got to do your homework, Mitch.
Everything else involved.
You have to do your homework. You have to do it. Like, there's no slack in here. I'm looking at stocks, looking at data, and trying to make the best of it.
Love it. Gerard giving you some love there. Loves the way you think, and that's what it's all about, man. Keep it going. And they asked me about my tie. You might see one next week, when I'm in office. Maybe I'll look a little pro-fetch, right?
You have to do the office suit. Come on.
Of course, right, Nick? I mean, you got to when you go into an office, you got to outdress everybody in the office.
You have to show up early, leave late.
You know it, Nick. I'll make you proud, my friend. I will. All right, guys, keep up with all the action. Of course, we'll be here with you guys. Keep up with Nick. Keep up with me. We'll see you next time. Stay right here for the next show. We'll get into some of that cannabis action, talk a little bit about some stock market action, and they also cover the crypto space. So don't miss it with the Trade to Black podcast. That's coming up next.